Hello and welcome to Rolling with Reviews. I'm Will, and with me as always is the person who uses an Illudium Pew 36 space modulator for all her terraforming needs,
Sarah.
And today we're reviewing Terraforming Mars, the dice game. Roll Mars back to life.
No back, but just roll Mars to life. But yes.
Back to life.
Okay.
Sarah, tell us a bit about this game.
Okay, Terraforming Mars, the dice game, is a card-driven dice game where players use special dice to develop their corporations and terraform Mars into a new home for humanity. The dice represent resources that players spend to play their cards and perform other actions. During the game, you increase your production of dice, terraform and place cities and greenery tiles on the board, and gain various bonuses. The game ends when 2 of the 3 global parameters have been completed: oxygen, temperature, or the ocean. The player with the most victory points wins. All right, well, so why did we get this?
So a long time ago, we actually played Terraforming Mars. We thought it was fun and way too long.
Way too long for us.
So when this came out, Sarah looked at it and she goes, well, it says it's going to take 45 minutes.
And it's a dice version.
And it's a dice version of the game.
Most dice versions of games are faster.
Yeah.
And simpler, streamlined.
So, yeah.
That's
it would give us a game that we liked in principle at a time frame that we were more willing to spend on it.
Agreed.
That's why we got it.
That is why. So, let's start with the positives. What do we like about the game?
It's Terraforming Mars.
It does very much give you that experience.
In other words, it's like saying, hey, what about Terraforming Mars, but dice? And people are like, yeah! And that's what you get.
Yeah. It is. The dice are cool. I will say that. Yeah. Okay. The cards are simpler. I was looking at trying to remember what the original Terraforming Mars cards look like, and there's a lot going on those cards. There's a lot less going on these cards.
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily mean the game's all that much easier or anything, but it is simpler.
Yes.
What do we not like about the game?
It is not a 45-minute game.
Not for us, at the very least. We admit, for us, because of Will's vision disabilities, it takes us longer to play games. But our first game of this took over 2 hours. Our second game took a little less than 2 hours. Usually, once we've played a game once, we speed up a lot more for the second, and that just really didn't happen here.
Honestly, to get to the 45-minute play time, I think you need max players, all very experienced with this game in particular. So probably they're core playtesters?
Yeah. That would make sense. I mean, the problem is, because you're dealing with dice and you've got 15 different icons, 5 different dice colors, so each die color has 3 of those icons, and there's a rare, uncommon, and common side. So one symbol only shows up on one side, and then another one only shows up on 2, and then the last one shows up 3 times. It's random. So when you roll your dice, and all your cards are very specific, and they need a lot of resources, anywhere between, I think, 2 and 6 resources. I think most of them have between 3 and 5. But you need very specific icons, and if you don't roll them, well, you need to manipulate them or keep getting more dice. So it felt like there was this pattern of spend 3 turns just manipulating dice, either by gaining new dice or trying to or you spend a die to make another die of the side you want. Just so on the 4th turn, you could actually play a card and do a fun thing. But then you do that whole pattern all over again, and it doesn't seem to get shorter.
Yeah, the only time it gets slightly shorter is if you spent your time building up your production. But building up your production doesn't give you exciting turns right in the moment.
No.
So it's a lot of very slow plotting, and then finally by the end, yeah, you can get more dice, but you're also burning a whole turn because when it comes to your turn, you're either doing a production, which is essentially resetting a lot of stuff and restocking things that you have, or you're actually playing a more active turn, where you're doing a little bit of gaining dice, but actually playing cards to build out in your tableau. And the active turn, you have what is called a support action and a main action. The main action is where you do all your building. You could also replace your main action with another support action. Support action is the main way you actually get and manipulate dice, and also more cards in your hand. So one option is get a die of your choice, roll it. It's not what I need. Okay. A different support action is get rid of a different a die, choose another die, and now you can change it to whatever face you want. Okay, that gets me past the very, very tedious process of I need the rare symbols here. But that's just one die that you've manipulated, and you lost a die.
Lost one, yep.
Or you can lose a die and draw 2 more cards. You have no control as to what cards they are. They're just randomly 2 new cards in your hand.
I don't think we ever used that option once.
No.
Considering how hard it was to get, or slow, I'm not saying hard,
Yeah.
how slow it is to get dice and get dice of the types you wanted, you were very hesitant to spend dice, even if you didn't need them in that moment, because as soon as you felt like you got rid of it, then you needed it.
Yes.
Kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, so you had a lot of turns of, okay, I get a yellow. Didn't get what I need. I won't build anything because I can't, so I'll get another yellow.
Right.
Yeah, I got to what I needed. All
So
right, that was my end of my
It was
turn.
pretty funny when we were looking through the rules on how all the actions work, and for a main action, you're like, it says you can do a support action. We were laughing. Oh, I bet that doesn't happen very often. Oh, that happened more than anything else in the game. I feel like more of our main action turns were to use a support action than to actually do any of the main action things.
I would have preferred if the main action, yeah, you'd give up to do a support action, but it was beefier than the basic support. Like, well, I'm giving up my main action, I'll do a support, and instead of just grabbing 1 die, I'll grab 2 dice.
Yes.
Type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels very, very lackluster.
Yeah. Or
and boring.
Or I draw 2 cards and I don't discard a card. Or discard a die.
Yeah.
Or I just choose one of my dice and change its face and I don't give up another die.
That would have been a lot better, because the fact that you're giving up your main action, which is you can turn in sets of 3 dice to do one of the, put
out a city, put out a forest, change.
But you need, again, specific die faces, which is the hard part. So yeah, there'd be times you get to your main action and you literally cannot do any of the 6 or 7 things that are possible, but you can't do them because you don't have the right dice.
Or enough of them.
So yeah, if you had a beefed up version of the support actions for your main action, that would have felt better. And it would have sped up the game tremendously. That would have fixed, I don't know if it would have fixed the game for me, but it would have made it better.
It would have actually got us closer to at least double the time rather than time and a half and a little bit more.
The other thing that was just weird, at the very beginning of the game when you're setting up, you take 1 of each die and you're going to you're going to take 3 of them randomly. So you're not going to pick a color and you're going to roll it. So whatever the 3 are, you're going to put them on the board. And at the end of the game, for every card you've built that has
the matching
symbols, you get an extra victory point. And you're like, okay, that's not terrible. The problem is, with everything else going on, the last thing you're doing is prioritizing which cards you build to get those symbols. You're trying to get them built. That's hard enough as it is, because you want to do the things that are going to get you bigger points and get to the end of the game. If you're prioritizing those tiny little points over just building stuff, you're not winning the game. The problem is that could be the difference between losing and winning the game.
Especially in a 2-player game.
Because
it's basically, it starts out, first place is 5 points, then it goes 3 points, and I think 2 points maybe?
Something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head.
But in a 2-player game, it's 5 points for the first player,
only
0 for nothing for the second place.
You're fighting over 5 points
15 points.
Sorry, 15 points that you potentially have very little control over. And if you are trying to control that, you're still losing the game. But you could be doing everything else perfectly, But because your cards don't have those symbols, you're losing out on 15 points, which could be the difference of winning and losing. And it's completely random.
Yes.
So for me, I just hate that aspect because it's not good. It's not good player choice.
Well, it's very meaningless.
Very meaningless player choice. Because you do have a choice into whether you try to make cards with those symbols, but it's not a good choice to do that.
Yeah. Well, considering how slow it takes for the game to develop.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe if there were fewer than 15 symbols, it would feel a little better.
I don't know. It just honestly feels like a vestigial thing that was left in because
It was
Terraforming Mars, the base game, had it.
Had something like that, and
Yes.
they're like, we're translating this word for word-ish. And I'm like, yeah, I could have done without that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I think that about covers what we don't like. So who this is for? Well, like Will kind of said, it's going to be for someone who already likes Terraforming Mars, but thought to themselves, hey, what if we could have dice as resources to pay for the cards instead and still had a long, meaty game? That's kind of who's probably going to enjoy this the most.
Yeah. Although, if you're a very experienced gamer, you might get a bit more time shaven off.
Yes.
It might maybe cut your Terraforming Mars game down in half, and that might expand who you can play with. Mm-hmm. Because you're probably that person that people are like, oh, they're the Terraforming Mars person. They always want to play that. I don't want to sit there for that long.
Yeah.
But this one, you're like, well, this one will only take like, half the time. And they're like, okay, yeah, why not?
Right. Now, the interesting thing I will point out, if this at all is interesting to somebody, there's room in the box for more. I mean, they even have foam spacers in there. So at least the way it looks right now,
Expect more.
expect expansions. Whether that's a good thing or not, we will not be here to find out. But if this is something that you like, you could probably expect more. Let's talk about our ratings.
So for our ratings, we each have 1d6 worth of ratings to give. 1 is low, 6 is high. We give a number, a reason why, add them together, see what it rolled for us. Sarah, what did Terraforming Mars, the dice game, roll Mars to life, roll for you?
Okay, I really wanted to see the merits in this game. This is not the worst rating I've ever given a game, but as you could probably tell, I have very strong feelings and reactions to the game, so it probably will not surprise anybody when I give it a 2. It's not what I wanted. So one, it failed my expectations, which granted, you should always temper your expectations going into a game or into anything that you've never seen before. But I really thought with the box saying 45 minutes and it being a dice game, it was going to adhere to that shorter time frame and be streamlined. It was neither of those two things, and it had a lot of stuff I didn't like. And I'm going to stop talking there. Your turn.
All right. I give it a 3. I thought it was all right. It overstayed its welcome and a 2-player count. I also have no idea who to really recommend this to. Because honestly, saying, this is for those who love Terraforming Mars but wants dice, that seems like such a niche audience out there.
Yeah, you'd think they make this for new players, those who either haven't played the original or didn't like the original, that this might be a version they'd like.
Yeah, I could see this as being a great way to be a stepping stone into, hey, if you want to go into the deep end, here's Terraforming Mars. No, this was Terraforming Mars, just, hey, dice.
Yeah.
And like, where's the middle ground here?
Yeah.
It just kind of threw us in there with setting us up for expectations of a shorter game, which it wasn't.
Streamlined,
Which wasn't, because, I mean...
Some things were simpler, but still took forever.
Yeah. I'm very baffled by the game.
Mm-hmm. Now, you did enjoy some of the mechanisms more than me.
Right. Like I said, I had a fine time playing with him. Having only 2 things to really decide on your turn meant that each turn would go by fast. The problem is, as Sarah pointed out, it was usually like 3 turns of meh, meh,
Yeah.
meh before ooh.
And it's just that. It's ooh. It's not woo. It was just, ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, because you also can't really combo anything.
No.
Because you can only build one thing on your turn. I think you had the most combos with cards we saw that essentially just gave you another turn.
Yes, I did actually get a few cards that were like either take another main action or one was take a whole other turn. But they were very costly and took me a lot to actually even put into play.
Yeah, and a lot of times they're like, well, that just gave me a head start on my next. Eh.
Yeah, exactly. Most of them was like, okay, well, now I can get into dice. Okay, that was a lovely main turn.
Yeah. Yeah. So 5 out of 12.
Sorry to say, we can't really recommend this to most people.
I think I would choose this over base Terraforming Mars if I had to choose a Terraforming Mars game, because I
Yes.
also found this one more accessible.
It is more accessible because some of the concepts are simpler. The cards are definitely a lot simpler. The board is a lot simpler, but simpler does not necessarily mean streamlined.
Right.
And that's the problem. It's
Yeah.
not shorter.
Yeah, Terraforming Mars by design feels like it's almost has too much and you don't do enough.
Yeah.
So if you always like the idea of Terraforming Mars, I do recommend taking a look at this a little bit closer. Just expect that it's still going to be a long game.
This is probably one of the few games I would say for your first game, you probably should try to get 4 people. And normally I do not recommend learning a game with max player counts, but this one will probably be the most because we haven't actually tried it, will probably be the most enjoyable in terms of length of game. The only problem I can see is each person does less.
Yeah.
So that could balance out the enjoyment of it. I don't know.
I think it probably also works that way with regular Terraforming Mars, because our friends who brought it over made sure that what we were playing was max player count.
That's true.
So I think they even realized that Terraforming Mars just works better with more players.
Yeah.
And this is probably the problem we're seeing. We're only coming at it with a 2-player.
Yes.
This definitely needs the max 4 players.
Yep.
So there you go.
Yeah.
All right, Sarah.
Uh-huh.
How do you terraform with that Illudium Pew 36 space modulator of yours?
You press the button.
There you go. And we've been rolling with reviews.
Boom.
And remember, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with 2. That's TWO. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And on YouTube, please like and subscribe.
And if you have time, check out the other content Nanaman has found for you, because remember, he's rolling with you.